brothers and sisters, to our second series, our second lecture in the series of Women Around the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We mentioned in the introduction that the Sahabiyat, the female companions, were some of the most noblest women who were the contemporaries of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were all described as pure and virtuous and honorable even during the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're just going to go ahead for our benefit, for the men's benefit, for our females, for our women benefit. We want to go ahead and educate ourselves so we have someone to look up to. Nowadays, everyone is the media, the cartoons, the movies. They are pushing what? They are pushing heroes, make-believe heroes, people that they wish they could have in this world, in their culture, yet they don't have them. So when you have, for example, Wonder Woman or Superman or Batman, these are all make-believe. Why? Because they don't have a Superman, but we have a whole bunch of Supermen. We have a whole bunch of individuals that were wonders throughout the history of Islam. And these things were not made up by our historians, but rather they were put there in order for us, our youth, to look up to them and say, you know what? It is possible for us to be in such a position and attain that. Now, today's topic is of a woman whom the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he praised in a manner that he rarely praised anyone else. It is a woman whom Allah and the messengers from the angels and the humans, so Jibreel alayhi salam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they all sent their blessings upon this individual. They all praised this individual. Imagine Allah, Jibreel, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they sent blessings upon this person. This was a woman whom unfortunately many women or many of us Muslims, many people are not familiar with. And this is due primarily to our own lack of education, our own lack of interest or enthusiasm. But if we look at it carefully, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he has a whole chapter on the virtues of this particular woman. Imam Muslim has a whole chapter on the marriage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with this particular woman, with this particular individual, and all of the things that has been narrated about her. The seerah books, all of the seerah books, there you cannot open up a seerah book, which is the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, except that you will see a mention of this particular woman at least a dozen of times. The seerah of Ibn Hisham, which is one of the primary sources of the seerah, has a whole chapter regarding this individual, regarding her marriage to the Prophet ﷺ, regarding her response and attitude and her help to the Prophet ﷺ when he became a prophet. And this woman is none other than Khadijah binti Khuwaylid ibn Asad ibn Abdul Uzza ibn Qusay ibn Kilab radiyallahu anha. She meets the Prophet ﷺ, or she meets the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ at the fourth grandfather. Meaning her fourth grandfather is the same grandfather as the Prophet ﷺ. So Khadijah binti Khuwaylid ibn Asad ibn Abdul Uzza ibn Qusay ibn Kilab. So the Prophet ﷺ's lineage up to the fourth grandfather is Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, also known as Shayba ibn Hashim ibn Abdi Manaf ibn Qusay ibn Kilab. The fourth grandfather, her fourth grandfather, and the father and the Prophet ﷺ's fourth grandfather were the same. And then before that, they're all the same. But then after that, of course, then the fourth grandfather had many other sons, and that's when their lineage departed. Her mother's name was Fatima, and Khadijah binti Khuwaylid, she was from the tribe known as Banu Asad. And Banu Asad, they were known to amongst the Quraysh for producing very wise people. In fact, two from amongst those wise individuals were her own cousins. Waraqa ibn Nawfal, who was the oldest, and Uthman ibn al-Huwayrith, who was the middle of the cousins of Khadijah radiallahu anha. And both of these wise people that Banu Asad produced, they were both her own cousins, her first cousins. And both of them were known to be Hanifiya. Hanifiya means that they were monotheists, meaning they were both Christians. They were both Christians, they were both monotheists. They took Allah as their only one worthy of worship, and Isa alayhi salam as the prophet of Allah, and not as the son of Allah, as later on Christians, the Trinitarians, considered him to be. Khadijah radiallahu anha's father was the most famous, and he was the most generous, and he was the most beloved from amongst the tribe of Banu Asad. In fact, he became, because of these virtues, because of his generosity, and because of him being very famous and beloved by his people, actually he skipped the ladder and he became the chief of Banu Asad. Who? The father of Khadijah radiallahu anha. Even though the father of Khadijah was the youngest, the father of Khadijah was the youngest, yet he was the one that became the chief of Banu Asad after her grandfather, meaning after Khadijah's father's father died, and he became the chief. Her full brother, his name was Al-Awwam. Who knows who is Al-Awwam? Huh? He is the father of Zubayr. So Al-Awwam was the full brother of Khadijah radiallahu anha. So now who is Zubayr? Zubayr is the nephew of Khadijah radiallahu anha, but also who? Also the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Zubayr's mother was Safiya binti Abdul Muttalib, who was the aunt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You see how they're all connected, and this is very important for us to know, because then it will explain to us the protection the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam got from the Quraysh. No one could harm him, because they're all somehow connected. It's not like, no one knows each. Everyone is somehow connected. The fourth grandfather, the third grandfather, they're all connected. And I'm setting the scene over here so you understand. So next time you hear about Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, it should already click that he was the nephew of Khadijah radiallahu anha. Another brother of Khadijah was Hizam. Now, who was Hizam? He was the father of Hakim ibn Hizam. Hakim ibn Hizam, he was the only person who can give us direct information on the pre-Islamic Arabia and about Islam after the conquest of Mecca. Hakim ibn Hizam, he was 60 years old during the conquest of Mecca. He did not become Muslim except at the conquest of Mecca. And he was 60 years old. And he lived another 60 years after the conquest of Mecca. So now, whatever we hear about the boycott of the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims during Mecca, who narrates it? It is Hakim ibn Hizam. Who narrates to us all of the Prophet ﷺ's youth and his childhood? It was Hakim ibn Hizam. You think Umar knew him? You think Abu Bakr knew him? They were all his contemporaries, or a little bit younger than the Prophet ﷺ. Hakim ibn Hizam was the full brother of Khadijah, and he's an older person. He's 60 years old at the time of the conquest of Mecca. So he was the contemporary of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, Hakim ibn Hizam, he would help the Muslims during the boycott, even though, why? Because his sister is the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Khadijah radiallahu anha. Khadijah radiallahu anha, she was born 15 years before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Khadijah was born 15 years before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now the name Khadijah, The name, sorry, she was born 15 years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The name Khadijah is a very extremely unique name. Who knows the meaning of the name Khadijah? Yes. Oh, mashallah. Not immature, but you almost correct. You were last night in the class. Mashallah, mashallah. Someone has some change? Huh? Yes. No, it's okay. It's okay, brothers. Why are you jealous? It's okay. I will give him. Come. Let me give you. I only have $3 and plus a whole bunch of $100 bills. I don't know if you want the 100. Here, $100 bill is less than 4 $1 bills. Yeah. There you go. There you go. MashaAllah. May Allah bless you. MashaAllah. Who's his father? MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Very good. Okay. Khadijah. Linguistically, Khadijah, it means premature. Premature. Because she was born prematurely. The scholar said that maybe the wisdom behind her being born premature was that she was ahead of her time. She was ahead of her time. And she was extremely beautiful. She was extremely well educated. She was well dressed. She was sharp. She was literate. She was perfect in her behavior and in her akhlaq. She was described as the most elegant woman in Mecca. She never worshipped idols, and probably it's because of the influence of her cousin Waraqa ibn Nawfal. Her nickname, this is all before Islam, her nickname was, one of her nicknames was Tahira, which means pure, even before Islam. And this was pure meaning in reference to her character, her akhlaq, her modesty. Urwa radiallahu anhu narrated that Khadijah was known to have never lied, never backbited anyone, never to have hurt anyone or upset anyone. I want all of my dear sisters and also my brothers to really understand, you are the most elegant, you are the most beautiful, you are rich, you have position, lineage, everything. When you have such a high status, what kind of you have advantage over everyone. How are you going to use that position? You have a very high position in the society. Are you going to use it to abuse? Are you going to use it for... Do you understand? She used it in the best way possible. Khadijah radiallahu anha, she was married 2 times before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the leaders of Quraysh. Both of the times she was born to the leaders of Quraysh. The first husband, he was famous by his kunya, which is a nickname, Abu Hind, because his daughter's name was Hind. And they had two daughters, Hind and Hala. Hind has one of the best descriptions. So Hind is a stepdaughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She has one of the best description of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had one of the best description of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he lived well after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, 26 years after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was still alive. Then Khadijah, when the first husband died, Khadijah married the second husband, and his name was Atiq ibn A'id al-Makhzumi, from the same tribe as Abu Jahl. She was 25 years old when he died. And so she would not get married for the next few years. And so Khadijah and both of these leaders of Quraysh, they were very wealthy. Her father was very wealthy because he was the chieftain of his tribe. So she inherited from her parents as well as from both her husbands that were extremely wealthy. So now she became the richest woman in Quraysh. You know how rich she was? Her caravan equaled the rest of the Quraysh. So she used to send 800 camels just carrying her goods. Quraysh in total, 800. Just hers was 800. It's like 800 semi-trucks in our times to Syria in the summer, to Yemen in the winter, to trade goods. Her nickname became Amira, Amiratu Quraysh, Sayyidatul Nisa Quraysh, Khadijatul Kubra. She was known as the princess of Quraysh. She was known as the leader of the women of Quraysh. Why? Because she had a green silk pavilion over her roof. This was not a sign of her wealth. She wasn't showing off her wealth. Rather, it was a sign for the poor that they can go to her for financial help. She was an extremely generous woman. Because of her generosity, she would be taken advantage. Remember, she did not take advantage of her position to hurt others. Rather, people would take advantage of her because of her wealth. And so she was always in search for an honest individual who could manage her wealth. So how does the Prophet ﷺ come into this picture? The Prophet ﷺ was actually a shepherd for a few or for several people in Mecca. And one of the people that he was a shepherd for was the sister of Khadijah. Her name was also Hala. I want you to remember this name, Hala. Hala is both the daughter of Khadijah, but also the name of also the sister of Khadijah radiallahu anha. So Hala, she gave some of her sheep to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you graze them? You know what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to get in return? Just a few dates per week. Subhanallah. He used to get just a few dates in return at the end of the week as his salary, and he was content with this. When Khadijah was complaining to her about how women are cheating her and taking advantage of her, Hala mentioned the Prophet ﷺ and his character. So Khadijah, now she became interested in hiring him to manage her wealth and do business on her behalf. In return, he would go ahead and get a large percentage of the profit. Now the Prophet ﷺ, he accepted the job offer and he went on his first business trip to Syria as a manager of Khadijah radiallahu anha. Khadijah sent her servant Maysara with the Prophet ﷺ, gave him instructions. Just observe him. And so through the wisdom, through his honest dealing, you know, my brothers and sisters, there's a book I'm reading. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. It's written by a Christian, a Mormon, right? It's the number one best nonfiction book, right? By Stephen Covey. You know, we always concentrate on techniques, how to be a good businessman, how to talk fast, and he mentioned something very, very amazing. He said, but we don't talk about how to develop our character, how to develop our sincerity, our honesty. These are things that he says. A Christian, he's saying this, that we don't develop this. He said, the way your honesty, how loud your honesty will speak is far more than how your eloquency will speak. Meaning when you are sincere and you're honest in your business dealing, people will bind to that. People will be attracted to that more than your eloquence. So this is something for us to consider. So the Prophet ﷺ, because of his honesty, he came back to Mecca with more profit than anyone else. Honesty in two ways. Honesty both in dealing with the merchants in Syria, but also honesty with Khadijah. Meaning the people before, when Khadijah saw how much her profit was, she realized it was the honesty of the Prophet ﷺ, because the others, they would go ahead and sell it, pocket a few of them, and give just crumbs and some change to Khadijah radiallahu anha per dealing. Maysara informed Khadijah of his manners, of his honesty in business dealings, and even some unique events that took place, such as the branches of the trees being lowered and the clouds providing shade and shelter for the Prophet ﷺ. When he was in Syria, they the people when they would tell the Prophet, swear by Allat and Al-Uzza, say Wallahi, for example, you bought it for this much. So they will say, you swear by Allat and Al-Uzza. These were the two idols, the famous idols from amongst the five that they had. And he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, said that he would never take an oath by them even before. He said, these are the two names I hate the most. This is the fitrah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Remember, he is right now, he's in his early 20s. After hearing this testimony from the servant, from Maysara, Khadijah radiallahu anha's admiration for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam grew even more. Now, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was a monotheist. All of the prophets, even before receiving prophethood, innately, fitra, their natural disposition was that they never made sajda to any other idol. And so he was a monotheist, and Khadijah radiallahu anha, she was also a monotheist, which we mentioned before. Her friend, Khadijah's friend, by the name of Nafisa, she asked Khadijah about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so she started mentioning all of the nice qualities of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Nafisa said, why don't you go ahead and marry him? If you're mentioning all of these good qualities, why don't you go ahead and marry him? Now, at this time, remember, Khadijah, she was rejecting all of the proposals. Imagine a woman, high status, all of these positions that she had. She got proposals from Abu Jahl. She got proposals from Abu Sufyan. She got proposals from the other chieftains of Quraysh. She rejected all of them. She knew how these people are only after my wealth. And that's the other thing. You can sense if someone, he's befriending you because of your wealth or your position. You can sense that. And this is not something it takes a genius to figure out. So Khadijah knows the Prophet ﷺ, he's not after my wealth. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was refusing to get married because he has no wealth. This was his first time that he's making any type of money. Now Nafisa, she approaches the Prophet ﷺ and proposes that there's a woman of nobility, of wealth, of beauty, of akhlaq. Why don't you go ahead and get married to this particular individual? The Prophet ﷺ asks, who is it? And she tells him it's Khadijah. And Khadijah also sends an official proposal. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, you know what? I'm going to think about it. I'm going to consult my seniors, my dear brothers, and especially my dear sisters. Don't ever be duped by any person with their status, with their looks, with their money, or anything. If you are going to propose, my brothers, if you're going to propose to someone, sisters, if someone proposed to you online or through anything, if anyone tries to sweet talk you, you close all of those doors. You always consult your seniors who have at least 25, 30 years of experience in life and know how men think and how they act and behave. That's why in Islam, a woman has a wali. The definition of a wali is a guardian. What is a guardian? He's someone that guards your welfare. He's someone that looks after your welfare. Don't think just because he has one or two qualities that is good enough. No, even here the Prophet ﷺ, he says, you know what? Yeah, okay, she's all of this. There's no doubt. I'm related to her through our fourth grandfather. I'm still going to consult my uncle, Abu Talib. I'm still going to consult. He didn't use his own. No, I'm a man. I'm an independent person. We live in a very selfish, self-centric society nowadays where it's always about me, me, me. The whole universe revolves around me. No, the whole universe does not revolve around you. You have so many other considerations you must take into account. Otherwise, for the sake of one individual, you're going to alienate the rest of your family and friends in society. This is not a wise decision. So this is something that we learn from this even before Islam. So now, Abu Talib, he approves, and Tahira marries Al-Amin. The pure marries the most trustworthy. In fact, Khadijah, she had a dream that the sun was setting in her home. The sun was setting in her home. Another wife later on in Medina also has a dream. What was that dream? Who knows? Yeah, very good. The moon sets or lands in her lap. Yeah? And who was the dream by? Safiya. Who said this? Yeah, very good, mashallah. You see, so these all have connotations, right? These all have meanings. And just a side note, if you have a good dream, don't tell anyone. Because if anyone interprets your dream, it's going to come true. Yeah? If you have a bad dream, even more so, don't tell anyone. Only tell a good dream to someone that you know is capable of interpreting it properly. Don't tell your dream to anyone. And if you have a bad dream, just wake up. It has no meaning. Say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Spit to, do the act of spitting to the left side and change your position. This is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she has this meaning. She has this dream. Waraqa interprets her dream that she will get married to a noble person or a prophet. And who does the nikah? Waraqa ibn Nawfal does the nikah. And why did Khadijah, of someone like the Prophet ﷺ, he's not a prophet at this stage. No one knows he doesn't even know he's a prophet. Why does she marry the Prophet ﷺ? And this is for all of our sisters to take into consideration. She marries the Prophet ﷺ because of his akhlaq, because of his character. She says, "Inni qad raghibtu fika wa husni khuluquk wa sidqi hadithik." That I married you because of your husn khuluq, because of your beautiful akhlaq and your truthful tongue, your truthful speech. I married you because of these two qualities. And this beautiful, this union, this blessed union produced 7 children. 7 children. Qasim, Abdullah, Tayyib, also known as Tahir, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima radiyallahu anhunna ajma'in. Her household consisted of her children from the previous marriage, which was Hind and Hala, Zayd ibn Haritha, Ali ibn Abi Talib, because the Prophet ﷺ took him as his responsibility because Abu Talib had too many children that he could not afford to take care of. Ayman, their servant, also known as Barakah, and the Prophet ﷺ's freed servant. I would like to stop here. Just because of time, I want to make this, short and sweet. There is a second part to this, or if you guys like, we can continue, but it will be another 25 minutes. What do you guys want? Huh? I don't want to make it too long. It's up to you guys. Raise your hand if you want me to continue. Okay, raise your hand if you want me to continue next week. Okay, khalas, we will continue next week, inshallah. Maybe, inshallah, I'll try to get some change and we'll have some Q&A. Maybe the sisters, if they have an answer to it as well, then we will try to give away some prizes, cash prizes, inshallah. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions? Yes. Yes, yes. Yeah, yes. Monk, yes. 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 Yeah. Yes. Correct. Oh no, so the reason I don't want to go into detail, because this is not about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is about the woman around the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Otherwise, then we will go into the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We want to only concentrate on the woman around the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But even if I was to talk about the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the greatest seerah, but that particular incident is disputed, and a lot of the scholars of history said that it's a very weak narration. I probably would mention it But I would give this disclaimer that take this with a grain of salt. Yes? So, yes, so Waraqa ibn Nawfal, he correct, very good question. Why did Khadijah marry Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam when the dream was interpreted that she will marry a prophet? In fact, the dream was interpreted that you will marry a noble person or a prophet. Or a prophet. So a noble person or a prophet. Because sun signifies what? Something that's very magnificent, something that's very noble. It gives a noble person someone that brings benefit and to everyone. Without the sun, can we survive? We cannot survive. It brings beauty, it brings happiness, it brings energy. And that's what a noble person does. He's someone who does all of this plus more. And the sun always signifies a man, most of the times in the religion. Just like we have in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, the sun was interpreted to be the father, the moon is interpreted to be the mother. And that's why if you paid attention, I'm sure you all did, in my khutbah, I talked about the solar and the lunar eclipse. If you made the connection, solar representing the father in the family or the husband in the family, and the lunar or the moon representing the wife or the woman, the mother in the household. And then I made that comparison with the social eclipse. So, and the stars, even in Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam's story, the stars represented what? The brothers, so meaning siblings or children. And so I made that comparison as well. So these are just some of the things that have been mentioned authentically in the Quran or in the Sunnah about what certain things represent. Like, for example, a snake represents what? Right? Either the devil or someone who's devilish or someone who's, a backstabber or something like that, right? And this is also proven from authentic sources. There's a whole chapter in Bukhari where it's called the interpretations of dreams. The Prophet ﷺ will interpret dreams. Any other questions? Yes, I cannot see. Sorry, I cannot see you. Yeah, so I mentioned very clearly that Khadijah radiallahu anha, she did not make her wealth through her being a businesswoman in the sense that we know today. She inherited all this wealth and she had managers or people to manage her wealth and to invest on her behalf. So she did not have, that type of role in the society. In fact, the society would not allow it. It wasn't conducive to that type of behavior. Another thing I forgot to mention. How old was Khadijah radiallahu anha when she married the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? 40. There's another authentic opinion, and this is the opinion that I follow and I believe in. She was 28 years old. She was 28 years old, and the Prophet ﷺ was 25 years old. Now, let's do the math here. And this is reported in the Sirah of Ibn Hisham, by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Now, a 40-year-old woman, can she have 7 kids? It's not possible. Even if she was to have a kid, which is not true that she had it every single year, there is an age gap. A 40-year-old woman cannot have 7 kids because, physical restraints and, in other things, right? Physiological changes in her body and so on. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said, there's a narration from him, that Khadijah radiallahu anha was 28 years old. And if you look at it, can a 28-year-old woman have 7 kids? Very, very possible. Yeah? So this is what I tend to be, I mean, this is not an aqidah issue. This is not something, if you don't believe in this, khalas, you're not. No, no. This is an opinion, but a very strong opinion that Khadijah radiallahu anha was not 40 years old. She was 28 years old. And it makes sense that a 25-year-old would marry a 28-year-old or someone who's close to his age. And someone like Abu Talib would definitely approve of such a marriage. Any other questions? That's another opinion. Look, at that time they didn't have count and birthdays and birth dates and these things. So people would go ahead and yeah. So the most famous opinion is 40, but the other opinion is 28 years old. Yes. Yes, she had a dowry. The Prophet ﷺ had a dowry that he paid to her. It was a few camels that the Prophet ﷺ paid, that all of his cousins and his uncle, and he also made some money. They put it together to develop, to go ahead and come up with that and pay the dowry of the Prophet. I can get the exact amount, inshallah, next week. A good question. Yes, anyone else? All right, inshallah, short and sweet. I'll see you guys wanting more, inshallah, next week. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.